Hi there, and welcome to the RevOps show. Have you ever noticed how most projects don't fail at the start or the finish? They kind of just get stuck in the middle? Today, Doug and Jess are tackling this concept head on. We're giving you a behind-the-scenes look at how we at Lyft keep projects moving so they don't die in the swamp of almost done. So let's get into it, shrink that middle, and get to the finish line.
Jess, it's not that bad.
What's not that bad, Doug?
I don't know. Whatever it is, it's not that bad.
Okay.
It'll
Cool.
all work out in the end.
Great. Awesome. Thank you for that. I needed that today.
Remember, in the long run, we're all dead.
Wow. Starting off with positivity.
You know, in its own way, that is that when you think of it that way, it's like, hey,
Yeah.
how? So I have one question for you.
Yes.
Only
Only one. Just
Only
one.
one.
Okay. Great.
Was it in fact a small world?
It was a small boat.
I don't think it was a boat.
Ship. It's a small ship.
Do you know what the difference between a boat and a ship is?
I don't actually know the difference between a boat and a ship. This is going to be great. This is two
Why not?
questions, by the way. That's the second question that you asked me.
Well, it's technically it's a follow-up.
Okay. All right.
It's a sub question.
What's the difference between a ship and a boat, Doug?
So a boat is any sea-bearing vessel that can be carried on another sea-bearing vessel.
Oh, interesting.
Or a submarine. A submarine,
Is a boat. Oh, okay.
So submarines are always boats.
Okay.
And so a ship is a sea-bearing vessel that cannot be carried on another sea-bearing vessel.
Yeah. This could not be carried on another sea-bearing vessel, but it was a small ship. It was the smallest ship of the fleet that I was on.
Do you know? So I remember when the Disney Magic came out, and it was cutting edge. And although Disney never went to the super large cruise liner, so anywhere largest.
But they are. Oh,
they're not going in. They're not where Royal Caribbean.
The new one that they're going to have, and I think it's the Destiny that's going to be going out of Singapore. It's sea only because it's so big you can't dock it anywhere.
That's been true of ships for a long time.
I don't know enough. Apparently, I don't know enough about cruise ships.
Wait until you go on to. I mean, does it have its own roller coaster? And
I think it might.
The NCL ships have go-kart tracks now.
Wild.
And the go-kart track goes over the edge of it. So
no. See, that's where I'm out. That's where I'm out, Doug. That's going to be a no for me.
Really? So I don't like heights. I get like I wouldn't do the zip liner and things like that they have. But you being the roller coaster person that you are, I would think that
that might wig me out a little bit going off this side of the. Yeah, I don't know how.
You're still on the track. You don't actually.
I understand.
Plane.
I understand.
So how was it, Jess? How was the most magical place at sea?
It was magical. It's where magic meets the sea, Doug. It's where magic meets the sea. That's the tagline. It was great. It was great.
Disneyland is the happiest place on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Disney World is the most magical.
And I'm not sure that's true.
I haven't been there before. That's on the list. I've never been to the happiest place.
It's been a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Disney World is the most magical place.
Yes.
On Earth. And Disney Cruises is where magic meets the sea?
Where magic meets the sea, yes.
It
was magical. That's kind of lame. Is that what you said?
Yeah, one's the happiest. One's the most magical. The other is where two things meet.
I saw fireworks in the middle of the ocean. It was magical. Those fireworks turned into fish food, we learned. They go into the water and turn into food for the fish.
Well, if it ends up in the ocean, Jeff, it's a pretty good bet that the fish are gonna become fish food. Whether that should be the case or not, I have no idea. I'm sure they're fine. So how drunk were you during the fireworks? I
did not get drunk. I had my children with me. I did not get drunk. I did drink, but I did not get drunk. I drank responsibly, as one should when you're anywhere Disney adjacent. You should drink responsibly because there's a lot of kids. Maybe you should be drunk because there's a lot of kids. I don't know.
I'm saying, I'm like, wait a second. You're kind of like, huh? Well, Jess, it's springtime, and you know what that means.
Have pitchers and catchers reported yet, Doug?
Oh, that we told you that's we're coming up. We're 8 days away? We're a week away from.
Well, I mean, it's not baseball season yet because it's still basketball season.
Baseball season has officially begun. The Dodgers are officially 2-0. The Cubs are officially 0-2.
But it's still basketball season, so it's not baseball season yet.
I don't think I agree. Is it ever really basketball season? I don't think so.
Not for me.
You could make the argument that it's hockey season.
Basketball season's just been sad for me the past few years. So,
do you have your brackets in?
I've started my brackets.
Ooh, you're gonna have to. This is gonna have to be a tight episode. So you're gonna put your brackets in, aren't you?
For the team?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, you're not gonna do brackets?
I'm not gonna have them ready. No. I don't do that. I haven't participated in that. I do it with my dad, but I have not participated. Not with you guys.
Wow.
I have my thing that I do with my dad.
Right, but you don't like us? Is that what the issue is?
It's too painful, Doug. It's too painful.
It is. I was in amazing. I was in an almost unbeatable place last year after the first round, at the first 2 rounds, and then my bracket just totally fell apart.
Yeah. But no, it's a timing component. I've had 2 days to do this. That's not enough time.
I said, so it's springtime, so that means lots of things outside. So Dakota, it's very, very loud this time of year. So hopefully she'll stay nice and calm. Look at her. You can see her in the background, maybe. I don't know. Can you see her?
No.
No. I can't fully. I don't get the full width of the camera.
I'm aware. Yep.
Sometimes she does.
Yep.
Anyhow, Jess, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about shrinking the middle, Doug.
Eat less, exercise more. That's what I've said. That's what I said.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about shrinking the middle of projects.
Oh, we're talking about a different middle. Gotcha.
Yep. So can you kind of tee up what is this concept of shrinking the middle of projects? What does it mean?
Jess, I realize you may not have experience with this, but do you know that projects are more likely to fail than they are to succeed?
Well, not with that attitude.
No, I mean, if you think about it, most projects fail.
Yeah.
Most projects, I mean, in so many ways, most projects never actually get to the point where they're done, right? And I think one of the things that exhausts people right now, there's so much on people's plates today that you're running around. I always thought of the analogy. It's like having a 20-foot hole in your roof and only 10 feet of tarp, and it's raining. You're like running around like a crazy person trying to cover this. Oh wait, no, cover there, yep. Cover there, et cetera. And I think what the reason is projects pick up inertia, and inertia leads to failure.
Why do you say inertia leads to failure? Oh, you didn't go the way that I thought you were going to go here.
Where do you think I was going to go?
I don't know, but I didn't think you were going to go there.
So what's the difference between a good story and a good project?
I don't know.
The middle. A good story has a really good middle.
Does a good story have a really good middle or a really good end? Okay.
For it to have a good end, it needs to have a good middle.
Okay.
What are the 3 key components to telling a good story? A beginning, a middle, and an end.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the middle is where the intrigue comes in, and you set up and like your character development and all those things are going on in the middle. Where does a story go wrong? A story goes wrong. How often, let's talk about one of our favorite stories, episodic stories to talk about. Let's talk about Lost.
Okay.
Right? What happened to Lost?
They lost their way, Doug.
Where did they lose?
In the middle.
In the middle, right? And what happened?
Around season 4.
It became too much. A lot of people think that they didn't have a plan when they went into Lost. That's not true. They had a very clear plan for the first episode. I loved Lost, by the way. For the record,
Same.
I enjoyed the full experience of Lost. But one of the challenges with Lost, one of the challenges is the middle begins to pick up so much complexity, right?
Well, this is interesting.
I'm sorry, go on.
This is interesting with what we're talking about, because the other thing that happened with Lost, because I too am a huge Lost fan, that it wasn't supposed to go for as long as it went, so they expanded. They kind of expanded the middle, like.
Well, back then, I mean, you had 20 some episodes per season, right? Every episode had to be a certain amount of time.
Yep.
And the whole point of getting a show on television was for it to go on for an infinite period, right? I mean, think about this. How good would Lost have been if it were to come out in today's world, in today's streaming world, where you put the number of episodes out in a season that you put out. Each episode is as long as the episode should be. And there's no expectation that you're going to go on forever. So you kind of come out with that clearly laid out. Lost would have been a great show. So the point is but great stories have really good, strong middles. Great projects don't have middles.
So why is that? What's the benefit of shrinking the middle of projects? You talked about inertia, but like, why do you want to shrink the middle?
Because that's where complexity lies in. That's where like think about every problem with the project. Scope drift, expectations drift, how many things are we doing, fixing something before it breaks again, the world, what's happening to the world outside. So like when you start off, think about a CRM implementation. You come in, there's a point in time when someone says, we need a new CRM.
Yep.
They start planning based on that point in time. By the time you begin your CRM implementation, the state that led to you to define what you needed to do for your CRM implementation is no longer accurate, right? Things have changed. Right. So now you start building out this whole new, I mean, if you think about it with a project, you are in essence building a whole new timeline, right? We're back to the future time travel here, right? You're building out a whole new timeline that's parallel to the timeline that's going on.
Right.
And so like, why do people hate their websites when they go live? Because by the time they go live, it's no longer accurate. Why is road construction always screwed up? Because by the time you start the actual construction, the situation that you're, the problem that you're solving for is no longer the problem. More often than not, the problems become much bigger and you're not sufficiently solving the problem. And then the project becomes this never ending project. You never get, I mean, it's what we talk about getting to complete. You never get to complete. Right. There's an old phrase, and we're going to talk about this, but in the middle, everything feels like failure. I'm going to go further than that. In the middle, everything is failure.
So is some of the goal shrinking the middle, is that to combat that feeling of failure? Is it to get a quick win so that way you can get momentum forward? Or
yeah, I think that, I mean, the reason that I'm not jumping to yes is because of the adjective. It is adjective, I think. I don't know. I didn't do well diagramming sentences. Is the word feeling? Is it to eliminate that feeling of?
Yeah.
And the reason, because sometimes it's like, well, it feels like this isn't working, and my like, okay, I don't really care how it feels. I care, is it working or is it not working? Right, and that's why you need data. So for me, that's why I'm saying it's more than it feels like failure. It is failure, right? It's like an open project is like an open wound.
Wow. I don't know how I don't disagree with that, but I also don't like how I feel about that statement.
But you agree with it, don't you?
I do.
Right? Well, the wound is open, which means only things can go wrong.
Yeah.
Right. As you start opening it, and it's, the other thing you have too, we one of the things we want to do, this is the whole, I mean, this is what Agile is about, right? Agile is all about shrinking the middle. Why do you run sprints? And, sprints need to be more like, sprints need to get you to something that you can call complete. Yeah. This is done. Doesn't mean that you can't revisit it in the future if necessary, but something is done. So it's like, So your sprint might be, I'm putting the plan together, right?
Right.
Well, okay, well, the plan's done. So the plan is complete, but nothing's done. Well, okay, no, nothing's done, but the plan is complete, right? And that's why, defining that finish line, right? See, so here's a question for you, Jess. How far can someone run into a forest?
How big's the forest?
Doesn't matter.
They can run as far as they would like to.
No, there's an actual defined, there's a specific measurement.
Okay, what's the measurement? What's the
Half-
measurement? Halfway. Oh, I see. Okay, that's the furthest point.
Once they're past halfway,
they're going out of the forest.
They're now running out of the forest. So if you don't have clear definitions, right? It's because the forest doesn't add a whole. Oh wait, I ran into the forest and 100 miles of trees got added to it, right? So where is that halfway point, right? If there's a halfway point, and again, what you'll see is there's I'm forgetting the name of the book. We'll get it in the show notes, but it's basically why projects fail and why large projects fail. How can you shrink the size of the project so that instead of doing one big project, make it the culmination of a whole bunch of small projects, right? And I would say my experience is once a project gets beyond 90 days, and I would, and so like to me, a 90-day project is a large project. Now, but Doug, how can you say that? There are projects that take years, right? They're going to be handled a lot better if they're a series of 90-day projects. Again, this is the basic underlying theory of Agile, right? And so getting rid of the middle eliminates the vast majority of project management complexity because you have less drift.
Yeah. How do you, so like a lot of the deep thinking and the figuring out and the problem solving happens in the middle. So how do you reduce the middle, but still, oh, this is going to be fun.
I think the deep thinking happens in the beginning. I think in a successful project, the deep thinking happens in the beginning. I think in projects that fail, the deep thinking happens in the middle. And you end up coming into and you start dealing with things that you didn't, and that's where everything starts to expand.
Okay. Let me change this a little bit. So like, it's not until you're in the middle frequently that, and maybe not frequently, but sometimes not until you're in the middle that you realize things that you didn't know at the beginning, and you've got to problem solve those items. How do you shrink that, but still make sure that you're addressing and really leaving time for the learning that needs to happen as you're working your way through the project?
I think that, so again, if you shrink the middle, you're shrinking how much you're trying to do. So you don't walk into, like, again, this gets back to what's your definition of complete. A lot of times you realize, like somebody once showed me this. They said, this is what transformation is. You're here and you want to be here. Right? But transformation is this process of going from here to you're moving to the state that you want to be, but you're still in the state of what you don't want to be.
Right.
Right. And this is where progress, perfection is the enemy of progress. Right. It's like, okay, well, we've got to get like there's no going through getting to here. We talk about change management. Like this is where we end up, we screw up change management. We make the change too big.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're like, so that learning should be ongoing. And as you're running your sprints and as you're running what we call your epics, because I think what we call an epic is technically different than what Agile calls epic. So
it is, yeah.
An epic.
Yeah.
Right. As you're like, we learn a lot of things that we go, oh, wow. Now, if you think about it, when we get paralyzed by what we're learning and we don't continue to move to where we're going, that's project failure number one. And by the way, when you do that, it always makes sense. So the question that I say is, do you learn something that is paradigm breaking, something fundamentally important that we thought was true, we've learned is not true? If that's the case, then what you have to do is break the entirety. What we have a tendency to do in that is we keep what we've built and then we add on these like workarounds or whatever in the middle of something. And it's like, well, no, what we would have been better off doing is we're still looking to get to the next waypoint. Even though our destination has ultimately changed, we still need to get to our next waypoint. Because, by the way, what I would say is what's happened there is the beginning of the next project has initiated, right? But what ends up happening is we get stuck in the middle, and now we're carrying. So instead of getting from here to here, we're now carrying this, and now we're having to support multiple realities. And I've got two hands, but the reality is, as the middle lengthens, every finger is going into a different direction. And so you've got multiple dimensions of complexity coming in, pulling everybody in different directions. People's priorities are shifting, everything, nothing's done. And by the way, how often is it? How often is it where, have we made the decision on that yet? Okay, good. But once someone says, no, the decision's been made, right? What goes from being, oh no, this is absolutely important becomes, oh, well. The other thing too is people don't perform well in periods of disruption. And that's what the middle is all about, disruption, right? Because nothing, and by the way, the other problem with the middle too is the middle's boring.
It is.
All kinds of things show that one of the things that happens in the middle is performance goes down. Actual performance goes down.
Yep.
Nobody runs a 26.2 mile marathon. Right? What does everybody who runs a marathon do? They break it down into component parts, right? I'm not a marathon runner. I know. I look. Sometimes people confuse me for that, right? And the NFL season used to be 16 games. It's now 17. So I think they still break it into 4 segments, right? But it used to be, the way I would hear the way they would talk about it is you'd have 4 records. Right. If we can go 2-2 in segment 1, we're fine. If we want to be 4-0 in segment 4, right? Because breaking it down, and why are you doing that? You're getting rid of the middles, right? You're establishing your ability to track: are we on progress or are we not on progress? Because that's the other thing I would say is the purpose is never the project, or the project is never the purpose. The project is a means; it's not the end. How often does the project become it becomes so dominant, it becomes the end?
All the time. So I think I want to unpack a few things that you talked about. So first of all, you brought up 90 days, and I agree with you. That's a large project. The one thing about 90 days that we talk about is it's not so long that it's creating too much disruption and you can't adjust, but it's a long enough period of time to really make an impact when we're talking about a large project. That's why we like that 90-day time frame. I think the other thing, so you alluded to sprints, and for us, sprints are either weekly or 2-week periods of time, depending on the project. That has to do with the resource allocation, complexity, number of people involved, what is all the project composed of. I think one thing that's really important is the waypoints and the categories that those sprints fall under, because there is a risk when you break this up that things are going to become super fragmented and we're going to lose what we call the plot, which is your waypoint, your endpoint, what is complete. All of those things are kind of the same thing. So making sure that as you break those things up, you anchor into, okay, this is what we're striving towards.
So one thing I want to say, the endpoint and complete are not the same.
Okay, well, so the endpoint is where we're going in this particular sprint. Like that's the endpoint of the.
So to me, I care about 3 things.
Okay.
Where are we shooting to be 18 to 36 months from now? Where are we shooting to be in our 90-day cycle? What's to be done in this?
Mm-hmm.
So complete is the 90-day cycle. That would be the definition of complete.
Right.
Right. One of the things that I just did is I took something, a project that would have typically been a 6-month, and I actually broke it into 2 3-month projects. Right. So project 1 is to launch. Project 2 is to roll out. 3 years ago, we would have proposed that as one thing.
Right. Yeah.
For 6 months.
Yep.
It would have surely become a 9 to 18 month.
Yep.
Debacle.
Yep. Yep.
That's an example of shrinking the middle. But think about this, right? 90 days is too long.
It is.
That's why we have sprints.
Well, so the other thing we do frequently with our 90 days, because 90 days is either an ongoing epic for us or it's typically an implementation. Our implementations are always broken into 3 parts, right? We've got our deep dive discovery road mapping phase, right? Roadmap phase. We've got our design. Thank you. Our design phase, our build phase, and our launch phase. And those are 3 very distinct things that were different, and they're different motions too, which is the other reason that breaking those up is so important, because we've got different modes we even operate with the client in when we're doing those. And then for our ongoing, they get broken into what we call areas of focus, which are also their own component pieces with very different motions and different teams kind of working within those. And those are kind of your endpoints for an implementation. It's more clear like what the end of each of those are, because design is phase 1, that has a date that's done. Build is phase 2, that has a date it's done. Launch is the end of the 90-day period. For an ongoing implementation, those are a little bit less clear, because they could span the full 90 days. Some of them we could be working on them in the middle. It just depends.
And if you look at the clients that we run nice epic structures and we've got good sprints going, the progress that they make is they have far more velocity, right? We're able to generate far more juice for the squeeze. And the reason is, if you think about ongoing, right? What's another word for ongoing?
Never ending.
And what's another word for never ending?
Forever. I don't know what we're middle. Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because what is the middle? The middle is not the beginning and not the end.
Right.
But if I'm, so if we can launch and finish, people typically get off to a fast start, right? Think about the dioramas that we got assigned to when we were young. We said, I'm not going to wait till the last minute this time. We got off to a super fast start. Then all of a sudden we got into the middle, up to the side. And, no matter what we did, we still didn't get it finished till the last minute. You're somebody who plans, prepares, etc. But you still, like, when do you get the recording done? We get the recording done when it's due.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And by the way, if we didn't have the finish there'd be 3 things that we would be able to, like, it's like, yep, okay, those 3 things, they go on the backlog. They go for the next thing. Like, how often is it where we've learned something that's so instrumental that it's the difference between success or failure?
Not that often.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And if it happens, then okay, there needs to be a quick redesign and a quick relaunch. Right. But I've always said, if I'm sailing from Annapolis to Barcelona and I get blown off course, okay, I'm still making the adjustment. Right. If I all of a sudden go, oh my God, I'm off course, let me, throw the whole plan away.
Right.
Right. That's where you get lost at sea.
Yep. And I think, we've talked about setting that clear definition for complete.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sailing, but I meant to say, I'm not sailing from Annapolis to Barcelona. I'm breaking it down. It's like, how far
your waypoints
can I be blown?
Right.
Oh, and by the way, if the storms are really bad, if the seas are really bad, what do you do to the waypoints? You shrink the distance.
Which is why for more complex projects, we shrink our sprints. So we have more of those waypoints. And I think, we've talked about that clear definition for complete. You can't have velocity without that. And like, the most important thing for me in a project is velocity. Can we get velocity and can we maintain that velocity? And that's where, communication becomes so much more important. And the thing I like about the sprint structure is it forces that communication, because we time our check-ins around our sprints, both with our clients and our internal check-ins. And so that's that waypoint, right? That's that touch point. So to your point, Doug, I get the recording done. I also know I got to meet with the client tomorrow. So I'm sure as hell going to have these 5 things that I promised them done, ready to go. And so it does kind of force. So I think those are the things you build into your process to allow you to kind of shrink that middle and make sure that you are getting that velocity and that traction and moving toward.
The thing about all of that is like, this goes beyond just how we feel. This goes to how we perform, right? And when we have tighter elements, it's like, if I give you a 90-day target, you'll ignore it for the first 10 to 12 weeks.
Sure.
If I give you a 1-year target, you'll ignore it for the first 50 weeks.
Right?
Because you'll be like, oh no, I'm fine. Okay. Right. It's just the way, right? And then the other thing too is, so I have this, me and my streaks, right? I'm at like 3,100 straight days of at least one 15-minute walk, at least hitting this, right? And there was a day the other day I was like, I just really don't feel like doing it today. I just don't feel like doing it. And I'm like, and you know what? After 3,100 days, I'm allowed to take a day off.
Right.
But then I was like, but that means I've got 3,100 days until I break a new streak. So like right now, and it has an impact. What did I do? I got up and worked out and did my thing, etc. Right. So there's no questions. Like, to me right now, every day it's a 1-day sprint. In that sense, there's no long slog about this. I get that dopamine release of my watch pinging me and going, goal achieved.
So the other piece, and I think this is a place where we actually need to get better. Like, our team as a whole needs to get better. Of the sprint structure is like, the sprint is the sprint. And the 5 things that pop up in the middle of the sprint, those go to backlog. And at the end of the sprint, we have a conversation about, okay, what's the priority here? And some of those might go to the backlog by the way of the end of the epic. Like, those go in the epic backlog. Some of them might go into the next sprint because they are urgent. But this is the place, and it's really hard in the middle, to your point of what you talked about earlier of, okay, well, this thing popped up and this thing okay, well, that's little, so I'm just going to do that. Okay, well, I'm just going to do that. And then all of a sudden we're totally off course. So I think that having that structure built in, having that complete defined, and making sure you're really adhering to that and pushing things to the backlog is super important, because that's actually where projects go to die, is death by 10,000 paper cuts. I mean,
and the way I look at it is, you've got 2 types of motions here. You've got the ongoing motion. You've got the I'm going to call it the development motion. So the development motion is, you're building something very specific. I think in the development motion, your sprint is your sprint. Now, by the way, that means if something pops up, it gets put on the backlog. But it also means if something can't be done, because sometimes you do learn, oh, wait, you know what? I can't do this because so-and-so was supposed to provide, this, it's not there, whatever. You're supposed to replace, like, okay, that goes to the next sprint. What are we going to pick up for there? On the ongoing motion, what I say is that's 70 to 80% true. You need to allocate about 20% of your productivity time. And by the way, 20% of your productivity time, not 20% of your time, because you're not productive in all of your time. But 20% of your productivity time needs to be allocated to things that are going to pop up, that are going to need to be addressed that day. And here's the thing that I want to get across to people that are listening, especially as a provider. This like, if you don't have something like this, you make it virtually impossible for someone to project manage for you.
Yep.
But the reason that this is important is not because of project management. It's because what happens when you get things to 60 to 80% done is they're pretty close to being done. It doesn't fit, they don't have the same level of urgency. So if you allow that middle and it's not about complete, then you add things in, nothing ever gets done. And that's why in the middle, everything is failure. Because guess what? Our one implementation fail, we were 90 to 95%?
Yeah.
What's 90 to 95% of a CRM implementation worth?
0.
And by the way, what happened? Where did it go wrong? It went wrong in the middle.
In the middle. Absolutely.
We allow the definition of complete to shift.
Yeah. I have a couple of takeaways, but is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
if you turn your head to the side and you listen to what we talked about today, here, the key to getting rid of the middle is eat less, exercise more.
My takeaways are you need to set clear definitions for complete. We've talked about that before. Make sure you have those clear waypoints. And really the biggest thing is look at where you can break things up. And then you need to build that into your process. So look at where you can make the components of your project smaller. Again, paying attention to those waypoints, and then build those touch points into your process, build that in so that way you are communicating, reducing that time. So that way you are reducing the complexity of the project.
Yeah. And I would challenge somebody, what can you not break down? I would say the thing that
Fair.
Like the place when you're doing this right, where you need to be careful is you don't break something down to such a small level. And the challenge when you and to me, again, that's why there's an epic that matters. This is why user stories are important. This is why having that long-term, because what'll happen is if you're running your projects correctly, the danger that you get is project myopia. Your completes are so short-term, you lose the bigger picture. That's what you need to guard against.
Yep.
But this aspect that, well, I can't have it done, right? There's no way we can't get something to a place where there's a value of complete within a 90-day period.
Right.
And maybe sometimes what you got to do is you got to break it down into a 2 to 4 week period to figure out. Like sometimes you can't make that 90-day period yet. You need something smaller so that you can get there.
Yep.
But if you try to take on too much, you're just asking for chaos, complexity, and failure.
I agree.
I thought you were gonna add one more. You know what happens when you get rid of the middle, Jess?
What?
You say no to shitty RevOps.
Till next time.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the RevOps Show. Don't forget to follow us on Apple or Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All links will be in the show notes for you to do just that. If you have any inquiries about the show or have any questions you want Doug and Jess to answer, feel free to email me at hannah@liftenablement.com. Remember, projects should be like a forest. You can only get to the middle before you're already running towards the finish line. There's no way to expand a forest in the blink of an eye, so why stretch out the middle of a project? Until next time, just say no to shitty RevOps.